Hey, what's up? Welcome to the AV Club podcast. My guest today is Chase Mariott. We talked about comics. We talked about the Marvel Universe, and we talked about Chase's passions. I mean, it's really cool to hear the guy open up, and I've never heard him get this deep into it before because I've never had like a one-on-one conversation with him. And so I was really grateful to get the opportunity to sit with him and chat. We also talked about fitness. This guy used to be pretty hefty, and he lost a lot of weight, and now he's not pretty hefty anymore. We got a little nerdy, a little flirty, and a little wordy. I don't know. Anyways, without further ado, Chase Mariott. Thanks. We're live.
3, 2, 1, live.
3, 2, 1, we're live. What's up, Chase?
What's up, baby?
Dude, hold on just a second. This is super rude, but we got a call here. Hey, real quick, you're on the podcast just for a second. Say hi to Chase.
What's up, Chase?
What's
How
up?
are you, bro?
What's up, Danny? Are you on your break?
Sure. I'm in the closet of healthy living.
Hey, bro.
Hey, wait.
It's okay.
I just want to feel safe.
Well, come on out.
Am I on the podcast for real right now?
Yeah, you called literally as we started, so you're on it real quick.
Dude, shout out AV Club. That's so cool. All right, guys. Well, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just had something to tell you. Anyway.
Okay, we'll talk to you then.
Have a good one. You guys have a good conversation.
All right, appreciate
Shout
it,
out
bro.
everybody. Share. Hey, if you're listening to the podcast, make sure you're sharing this shit on your stories on Instagram and Facebook too. All right, love you boys. I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right,
Later.
Bye.
All right, bye.
Dude, sorry about that. That was rude.
You're good, man.
Chase, thanks for coming on, bro.
I'm excited to be here, man.
Good, man. Let's get nerdy today. How does that sound?
Dude, you know me. I'm always ready to get nerdy.
So I'm genuinely curious about this. Where does it all start for you? How did you get so involved in the world of comics?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, for me, it started my freshman year of high school. I had a friend who he was really into comics, and I mean, I had thought like Iron Man and all that stuff was cool, like in the movies, like the few that were out at that time. I was like, yeah, they're cool. Like, don't get me wrong, like they're cool. But he would have these books that were like big guides of like characters and like how the Avengers got from where they are from the 60s to where they were at the time. And I just thought, wow, that's pretty cool. Like and he was kind of a weird guy, so I wanted to like be friends with him and like make him feel comfortable. So I started asking him questions.
So like, why is that? So he wouldn't shoot you?
No, so that he would feel comfortable because he was new to town.
Oh, okay.
And so I just started looking through them with him, and remember just thinking like, this is actually like kind of cool. Mm-hmm. Like this is actually pretty interesting. And he had brought one day, and I said, do you have any like others that I could borrow? Like I think I want to like start learning about these guys. And he said, yeah, sure. And the next day he brought me a guide to like all the Avengers characters that were important at the time. And it was about a 200-page book, and I tore through it, and I was just like, this is just so cool. I loved it because it like gave you stats on like power levels, intelligence, all these things, like gave a brief overview, and I just thought that was so interesting, and I was like, I want to know more. And so I kept saying like, do you have any others I could borrow? And he let me borrow a few more. And then that summer, I ended up buying my first thing that was mine, and it was a big guide on Avengers specifically and their journey from the 60s to, I guess, at that time when the book was published, 2010. And I remember just reading it we were at the beach with my family, and I just remember reading it, and I was like, this is just like, who would have known there was such an expansive universe like within these pages, and that was just one of the major companies. And from there, it just kind of snowballed. I just kept getting more guides, and then I started venturing into graphic novels, which is what I mainly collect. and not single issues, just because if you collect single issues, they stack up real quick.
Yeah.
And so I just started buying and buying and buying more graphic novels when I could, and asking them for Christmas instead of video games and other things. And nowadays, I think I have. Geez, I've counted them once and I can't remember, but it's a lot, and
Over 100.
Probably not that much, but probably gonna get there pretty soon.
Yeah.
Especially now that I have adult money.
That's right, making the big bucks.
But yeah, that's kind of where it all started, and it's just snowballed for the past, geez, I guess it's been 10, 12 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah, whenever I met you, had to have been,
I think that was
5 years ago now.
Yeah.
Freshman in college. We were both freshmen in college, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what Daniel knew about you. That was the main thing, because this
Yeah.
is when we had all kind of first
met
you. At
Right.
least me, y'all were just now at UMHB and roommates for the first time. And
Yeah.
yeah, and I was like, dang man, that's cool. Daniel's like, dude, this guy knows a ton. It's crazy. And I was like, dude, that's awesome, because my family knows a lot about it too. I'm on my mom's side.
Nice.
One of my uncles, he knows all about it. Honestly, I would say probably close to what you know.
That's cool.
Maybe since he has kids and a family, he doesn't actually probably do it as much anymore, but he reads online all the time about it. And
That's
so
awesome.
they've always been involved, and so I've always kind of known a little bit about it, but the movies are obviously what I know the most about.
Right.
And so anything other than that, anything deeper than that surface level is over my head. But
Right.
so getting started, when you learned about the Avengers, what was something that caught your attention? It's in terms of I don't know, because you see the movies, you're like, oh, okay, he does this, she does that.
Right.
The power levels, what is that? Explain that.
So the stuff that really got me with the Avengers and power levels and stuff is just let's take Spider-Man. Everyone knows Spider-Man. And I grew up watching the Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. So
Yeah.
Spider-Man was cool to me already, but it wasn't until I really started going in depth, because that was another one of the first ones I got, was a Spider-Man guide detailing his story, which is obviously one of the most complex and long and detailed of Marvel's history. And you think of those movies and you're like, oh, it's cool, Spider-Man fights these guys and Mary Jane, whatever. But then just as you dive into it, I never realized that Spider-Man can lift 10 tons. And no one would think Spider-Man can lift 10 tons. You're like, oh, he's strong.
Right.
He can swing webs. And then there's just so many other villains and characters that people who have only seen the movies just would never know about.
Yeah.
And there's just the tragedy of Uncle Ben, everyone knows. And then now that the Amazing Spider-Man's out, everyone knows about the tragedy of Gwen Stacy. And there's just so much more that happens other than just those things. And it's insane. And it was just so interesting to know that there's such a deep history that just keeps getting expanded upon. And while that can get complex because it's been 50 years since Spider-Man started, and it can be hard to stack upon 50 years of backstory, but
yeah.
At the same time, it's just so interesting that all this has happened and yet he's still going strong.
That's wild.
As a character, which
Yeah.
is just insane to me.
That's cool. It's cool seeing the different movies. Obviously, people have their favorites, but it's just it is cool to see his growth as a character, and
Oh, for sure.
I love those Spider-Man movies.
Yeah,
They're legit.
They're super cool.
Which one is your favorite of the ones that are available?
I mean, I like all of them for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Some are better than others. That's a large debate, but I think just the classic Spider-Man 2, just Tobey Maguire versus Doc Ock, that moment where he stopped from being he went from being just I'm a hero to really understanding the responsibility of what it means to be a hero.
Right.
And in the end, he doesn't even he fights Doc Ock at the end, but he ends up winning by just being a person and being a human being, which is all Spider-Man is about is like when Stan Lee created him, he said, I want a superhero, I want a teenage superhero, but what if instead of just him being a hero and that's all there is, what if he had real problems? Because up until that point, all it was adventure after adventure after adventure after adventure for whatever heroes were out at the time. And Stan Lee just was like, let's turn this on its head and let's do something that people connect with. And people thought Spider-Man would fail.
Really?
Like, he came to his editor at first and said, here's my pitch. And he said, that is the dumbest idea I have ever heard.
Wow.
And Stan Lee just stuck to his guns, and it's now Marvel's #1 property, which is just, that's why I think Spider-Man himself is an interesting character.
Yeah.
So. That's
crazy. So the Marvel universe is, I can't even wrap my head around half of it.
It's huge, man.
So let's talk about the Avengers, because that's more, like, everybody knows the Avengers, and it's easier to kind of understand their story. Mm-hmm. So, like, the phases, that's
like
all,
the MCU phases?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Is that what? So let's start from the beginning of that. Phase 1, what movies does that entail, and, like, what's kind of the story behind that? 'Cause I don't even know the phases.
Yeah, so phase 1 is Iron Man 1, The Incredible Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America 1, and Avengers 1. And honestly, from what I have seen and read from like Jon Favreau, who directed Iron Man 1, Kevin Feige, who was just head of this little Marvel Studios at the time, they're just like, let's make an Iron Man movie. And what a lot of people don't realize now, because Iron Man is such a huge character, is like, he was a C-lister, maybe a B-lister at the time in the comics. Like, people weren't reading Iron Man, like, people weren't super interested in him at the time. And they took this character and they made this awesome movie from it. And the rumor is, like, there wasn't going to be an MCU until Iron Man said, or till Robert Downey Jr. changed the line at the end of the movie and said, I am Iron Man, because that wasn't in the original script, which is the rumor. And
do you know what he was supposed to say?
I don't. I wish I did. Because in the comics, Iron Man originally was, he hid his identity before he revealed it, but he ended up just saying, I am Iron Man, which everyone knows now. And I think they just took that and ran with it.
Right.
And decided, I think we could do something here. And now we're 13 years in.
Yeah.
And one of the most in-depth franchises, if not the most in-depth franchise in all of cinematic history.
I think it is.
Just came from that one movie just changed everything, which is just, it's so cool to see.
Mm-hmm. I had no idea he was a C-list, like B-list, like lower type of superhero. When you think of superheroes, what are the ones that you think of, you personally, that not everybody knows of? Like, what are the ones that kind of catch your attention that you think should have a movie or maybe be more involved?
So in the comic book world, like people who know stuff, like, and is into it like I am, this character in particular, who's not Marvel, he's DC, he's well known. Lots of comic book people love this character, which is Nightwing. I think he deserves more recognition in the spotlight, like Batman. Because if people don't know, watching, Nightwing was the first Robin, and he grew up and said, I don't want to be in your shadow, and went his own way. I mean, him and Batman are still friends, I guess, if that's what you want to call it.
They still hang out, yeah.
Yeah, but, like, he said, I want to be my own person. Mm-hmm. And I think he deserves a spotlight. I think in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or the Marvel Universe in general, I would probably say I want Beta Ray Bill to show up.
That's fake.
No.
That's not a real person.
Yeah, it is.
No, that's not real.
So Beta Ray Bill is an alien who can wield Thor's hammer in the comics.
Oh, wow.
And basically he's a part of this race that I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, it was like either completely destroyed or on the brink of extinction, and Thor came across him and he thought Thor was an enemy, and they fought, and basically, to be honest, he kicked Thor's ass.
Oh, wow.
and he picked up the hammer and could wield it, and
how?
He was worthy.
Wow.
He had a pure heart and pure soul, and at the end of the story, like, basically Thor was like, I see you as like a worthy adversary, like a worthy ally, because I think they ended up teaming up and fighting some villain, and then he got his own hammer, and he now travels the cosmos as Beta Ray Bill and just fights people. I'm pretty sure he's been part of the Guardians and then like a Canadian superhero team at one time, and I think he deserves a spot. I think he's an interesting character.
Yeah. And I mean, that would be cool to have him carry that hammer in. Because, I mean, I don't know, many of the listeners probably won't know this, but like Thor's hammer can only be wielded or used by certain people, and very few people, right? Like,
correct.
Usually who are worthy, but in, what was it, the last Avengers movie?
Endgame.
But in Endgame,
Captain America wields it.
Yeah, which is nuts.
Right, yeah. Super cool moment, by the way. Teared up a little bit.
Did you really?
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome, man. It's cool how passionate you are about it.
Yeah. I mean, that movie in particular, when I saw it, I mean, so in the comics there's these things called like splash panels and then like panoramic panels where like you basically see this huge, it takes up 2 whole pages, and it's a whole big, like, almost like the photo you have back there, but of comic book characters. In that moment where like all the Avengers and everyone who came through the portals and they're attacking Thanos' army, it's basically one of those panels that you can read in a comic book come to life. And I just, when I watched that for the first time, and even sometimes now when I watch it, it brings a tear to my eye, because I'm like, I'm seeing this thing that I read and I've spent so much time enjoying and building my knowledge and loving come to life on a screen. And it's I mean, for lack of a better word, I mean, it's beautiful to me. So
that's awesome, man. No, it is cool because in these movies, especially when you see them in theaters, it's a whole different experience when you see any movie in theaters. But something like this, it's like, first of all, people love it, right? People love a good superhero movie, especially one that's well made, and where the characters, you've kind of grown with them and you've seen them progress over all the movies, of individual movies, and then like Avengers together movies. And it's cool because the atmosphere in a theater, I know 100% you've experienced this, but it's like everybody's there to just 100% focus on the screen. You don't have anybody like messing around, and like people start clapping in cool scenes, and like when like people, like when you think someone's dead and they're not, then somebody will start clapping, and then everybody starts clapping. So it's like a atmospheric thing that you get when you're in the movies. And so I totally can see that, how it's easily can bring a tear, especially to someone like you who's like you said, you read about this all the time, and like it's one thing to read, right? It's another thing to kind of see it come to life.
Right, exactly.
So how much, this is just kind of like a random question, but how much do you think the actual like actors know about the comics? Do you think they have to do like in-depth research? And
so I know like most of them, if not all of them, have read like key stories like from them. Like we'll take Elizabeth Olsen, who plays Scarlet Witch, for example. She absolutely loves her character. When she was told, you're going to be this character, she deep dived into the character and was like, wow, there are so many great storylines, and this character is so interesting. And she loves that character. And she's talked about storylines that she enjoyed when she was reading. I mean, there's pictures of Benedict Cumberbatch, who's Doctor Strange, reading Doctor Strange comics, and I think a lot of them know enough to play the character correctly, if not
as good as you
with
can
a
get.
passion.
Right.
And I think in my opinion, I think a lot of the people who are cast as a comic book character really enjoy being that character and they love that character. Like Henry Cavill, he loved being Superman. Like that's one example I can think of off the top of my head. Elizabeth Olsen, like I mentioned, and so I think they know enough to where I myself am happy, and I think it just comes across on the screen.
You believe them, right?
Right.
You believe that they are the character. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Which is really all it takes. I was curious to see if there was anybody who like did a super deep dive, which I'm sure there are probably people.
For sure.
But so let's get back to this. Excuse me, to the phases of the Avengers, man. So phase 1 and then phase 2. What movies does that entail?
So phase 2, I get a little fuzzy on phase 2 and 3, because
There's a lot,
especially phase 3. Phase 2 is, I believe it's Iron Man 3, Guardians 1, Captain America 2, Thor 2. I'm probably going to miss a few. Age of Ultron, and I believe the first Ant-Man caps off phase 2. I believe.
Yeah. Why do they do it out of order like that? Do you know?
What do you mean?
Like you just said Iron Man 3.
Oh, so Iron Man 3, so they do it in phases or whatever, but Iron Man 3 was like basically kind of Tony Stark's like first major arc ending. But it also was a great, I don't think anyone's categorized it as this technically, but it was kind of like an epilogue to the first Avengers. While a lot of people agree it's not a great epilogue, but it's still an epilogue because Tony's still dealing with the repercussions from the Avengers and what happened there.
Right.
And he's having to come to terms with anxiety and what it means to be Iron Man and what it means to be attacked personally and all these things and coming into himself fully. So I don't know if they did it out of order. I think it was just that's the way they decided to go. Because Iron Man is probably the staple character of the MCU. And so right out of the gate, if they're going to go into the next phase, they're going to go with their strongest one, their best foot forward.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense. So when you first of all, when is the last time you watched all of them kind of in order?
So currently me and my wife are in the middle of it. Well, we're actually at the end because the only ones we have left are Endgame and Far From Home. Spider-Man Far From Home. But we've been doing that for a few months now. And it's fun. I try and watch Marvel stuff. Like, I don't think I could watch the whole entirety of the MCU every year just because that takes a lot of time.
Right.
And being married and having a job and just so it's a little bit harder, but I definitely try and watch like my favorites, like the Captain Americas, like Thor 3, like the Guardians, like the Avengers for sure. Just especially I at least probably get in probably 10 to 15 Marvel movies at least a year, if not more, probably.
That's pretty reasonable. It's, that's like 15
Friday nights.
15 Friday nights out of all, however many there are. How many? So in the phases, why do they phase them out like that? Is it just because it builds the story up until like an ending, or is that how the comics are?
No, so I think that was just like a creative choice of just like, let's section this out so we don't overwhelm ourselves and the viewers.
Yeah.
Just so that we can have like this clear path, this clear progression of like, this was phase 1, this is a building phase. Phase 2, we take that foundation and we build a little bit more on it. And Phase 3 was basically finishing that pyramid. I know there's going to be a Phase 4, but like Phase 3 was like the pinnacle of that pyramid, and like it finally culminated in Endgame, where if anyone knows anything about like old timey building, that was like the capstone of the first few phases. And I think it was just a big progression, and I think that's why they did it, just to pace it out cinematically and story wise.
Yeah, that makes sense, because there's a ton. It's like I didn't know their phases were a thing until like I think you had mentioned it to Daniel, and then he had mentioned it to me, and then I get a lot of regurgitated information. So whatever you tell Daniel, I'll end up hearing. But he's like, and like, but you know, Chase will tell you better. But like, you know, he gives me like a rough draft of like what you said. But so the new TV series that are out on Disney Plus, are those important to the phases? And like, if so,
yes.
like it is.
They are important. They do connect and they do tie in. I would advise people to watch it, one, just because they connect to the MCU, but more importantly, they're just, from what I've seen so far, and currently, if you're watching this in like 3 years from now, currently only WandaVision has completed, and we're in the middle of Falcon and Winter Soldier right now. And I think both of them are great. WandaVision was a great mystery drama, and Falcon and Winter Soldier is a great action thriller, like buddy cop film, but in a show. And I think they're great, and they are going to be important, and you will see characters show up in the movies later.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
I saw a little bit of Winter Soldier. The dude I work with put it on. And so I was like, oh, this is interesting. But I didn't want to really pay attention because I wanted to watch WandaVision first. And then, another question. So my brother was like, I was telling him that you're going to be on. And so I was like, yeah, if you have any questions, let me know. And so he wants to know kind of like if you had to rank the villains,
that's a good question.
What would be like the order, and like in terms of like obviously like most powerful to like least powerful, or like least powerful to however you want to do that, but what are like the rankings of them in like terms of strength?
So if we're gonna go power wise, I'd probably say number one is the strongest is Thanos. I mean, he was set up for, I guess that was 11 years. So if he wasn't the strongest, then they did something wrong. Yeah. So I think Thanos is number one. Number two, I'd probably say, I think Hela from Thor 3 is probably number two, because basically the only way they beat her was to destroy Asgard as a whole, because they couldn't beat her by herself, and Thor and Hulk are like the strongest Avengers. So like if they couldn't beat him, like there was who could? And so I think she's number two. Number three, yeah, that's kind of hard. Number three is probably Ego.
Who's that?
He was the villain of Guardians 2.
No, Ego was the critic in Ratatouille.
He was also that. He was a bad. He that's actually number one, is Ego from Ratatouille. So Ego is basically he's a planet, and and Doctor Strange had to kill him, right? Was that no Guardians?
Okay.
Guardian. Oh well, I'll get to Doctor Strange in a second.
Okay.
But Ego's basically he's a planet, so like they also had to blow up a planet to kill him.
Wow.
And then you mentioned Doctor Strange. I totally forgot about Dormammu, who's basically a celestial god.
Yeah.
And the only way that he wasn't even like destroyed. He just basically got so annoyed that he just gave up.
Yeah.
So
how would you kill him?
I don't think you can. You probably have to destroy the dark universe, I think it's the dark universe. I'm probably not saying it right.
What's wrong with
It's probably something else. But you probably have to destroy that whole universe, which he's in charge of, and that's... nigh impossible.
He's the manager of the Dark Universe.
Yeah. Yes.
He's the CEO.
CEO, businessman.
That's crazy to think about. That they had to annoy him,
right?
to kill him.
Other than that, I mean, Loki's pretty strong.
He is.
I mean, like, magic wise, like, Thanos chose him for a reason originally to, like, take over Earth. I mean, he's not, but I think those four that I mentioned are probably the strongest out of the MCU, and I'm probably forgetting someone, but if you know stuff, comment below, and I'll know.
Let Chase know, educate him. What about Wanda? Because she's like, she could have killed Thanos, right?
Yeah. So.
I mean, I know she's not a villain.
Yet.
So
that's a good point. So spoilers for WandaVision if you haven't watched it. Basically, in my opinion.
Wait a second. You about to spoil it?
Yes.
I haven't seen it. Don't spoil it.
Okay, never mind.
But give me, like, can you say what you were going to say kind of without spoiling it? Like,
yeah, so I'll talk about Scarlet Witch in the comics. Scarlet Witch has changed the fundamentals of the universe multiple times.
Yeah.
She's a, what they call in the comics, a nexus being, which basically means she can change reality without the consequences of, like,
oh geez,
not in like consequences of like people won't come after her, but the consequences of like there would be ramifications within time and space.
So she could do it without that?
Right. So like in the comics, she changed the whole world to basically change the dominant race from human beings being on top and mutants being on the bottom to mutants being the top and humans being the bottom.
Wow.
And then a few weeks later, or however long it was that happened, she got fed up with fighting and just said, all right, no more mutants. And basically she took out the mutant gene, which is down to a genetic level in the comics. And basically she took out millions and millions of mutants and left 200 or so. So she, in my opinion, I think she is probably the strongest human in the MCU. And I think we will get, if you watch WandaVision, you'll get a taste of that. And I think we'll get an even bigger taste of that in her next appearance, which is Doctor Strange 2.
Wow. There's a lot of good ones coming out, right? What are the ones that are coming up? Movies, films.
Within the next few years, there's a bunch of shows. But movie-wise, there's pretty soon it's going to be Black Widow, and then it's going to be Shang-Chi.
What is that? So
Shang-Chi is the master of Kung Fu, and it's going to be an all-Asian cast, which is super exciting.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
And I don't think Shang-Chi has powers. I'm pretty sure I've looked it up, and I'm pretty sure he doesn't have powers because I don't know much about Shang-Chi. But I'm pretty sure he doesn't have powers, but he's just an awesome fighter. And then after that, it's going to be the Eternals. And then after that, it's... I don't remember the order. I think it's Doctor Strange 2. No. Then it's Spider-Man 3 after Eternals. Then Doctor Strange 2. And then Thor 4.
Dang.
That's what I can remember off the top of my head. And there's shows like She-Hulk, Moon Knight, Secret Invasion, Armor Wars... and a ton of others.
Yeah,
so
that's crazy. How well do these hold up to the comics? Are they pretty accurate?
So, the Marvel universe, Marvel and DC don't, like, they will take an idea from the comics and they'll basically make it more palatable to like a common audience. Like Civil War, for example, that's a huge event in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or the Marvel Universe in the comics, and that one's pretty faithfully adapted. There's a lot more going on in the comics and a lot more characters and stuff like that. So that's probably the best example of like faithfully adapted, but for the most part, people don't they'll take an idea from the comics or multiple ideas and spin it into something that's, like I said, more palatable to common audience, because a lot of the stories use all that history that I mentioned earlier, and they build upon that, and it's hard to do that on film when we haven't seen all that history. And so they'll take an idea like Iron Man 1, like his first outing as Iron Man in the comics wasn't against Ironmonger or Obadiah Stane or whatever his name was.
Yeah.
Like that wasn't his first outing as Iron Man in the comics. But like his origin is pretty faithfully adapted, but everything else is just like they took Ironmonger from the comics, said this will be a good villain. They fought in the comics, and let's make that the villain. Same with honestly, now that I think about it, I think Captain America probably has the best like adaptability from the comics to the movies, because all three of his are pretty well done. But like Endgame, there's not an Endgame comic that I'm aware of.
Right.
Like they fought Thanos in the comics, and it's called Infinity Gauntlet, and a few other titles because they fought him several times. But Infinity Gauntlet was like the first time they really fought him, like as a group, and like there is no Endgame where there's a fat Thor and there's Iron Man retired. Like there's not that.
Right.
But
right, makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's faithful and like it in the sense of the characters, but it's not really like let's take this exact story and put it on the screen.
Yeah. Is there anything from any of these movies that was missing from the comics that you like thought should have been in there? Does that make sense?
Yeah. My biggest one that bugs me, and I love Tom Holland Spider-Man. Don't get mad at me, people who love Tom Holland. I love Tom Holland.
Dude,
he's great. He's a great Peter Parker.
You,
there hasn't been a lot of web swinging with Spider-Man. And in my opinion, that is such a fundamental part of who Spider-Man is. And that is just like, when you think like let's take the game, for example. Like, one of the best parts of the Spider-Man games, especially the most recent one, is you can swing around New York.
Yeah.
And we just haven't gotten that with Tom Holland, which I think is a missed opportunity. So that's my opinion.
That's crazy. That's not at all what I thought you were going to say. I mean, I didn't know specifically what I thought you were going to say, but I thought it was going to be like, well, I thought they should have invited this character or introduced this character into the show because he is vital to like how they, whatever.
Right, yeah.
Is there any characters you think that should have been in there? Or is that like the really major only thing that you...
I mean, there are like things where like it would be cool if like a character showed up here. I mean, there's the whole Mutants and Fantastic Four, which Disney just acquired, which are huge titles in the comics, and they just now got them, and so they're gonna have to introduce them way later in the MCU. So I mean, I wish that we could have had those as we were building the MCU, but I think the MCU did a great job without them, and I think even if Disney hadn't acquired those rights, like it would have been great.
Yeah. That's cool, man. What do you think? Like, let's say a person who's probably seen like maybe Iron Man 1 and then the like a couple of other of the films. What do you think is their best bet in terms of like how would they understand, or which movies do they absolutely need to see in order to like to be captivated by the story of the phases and stuff? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, definitely Iron Man 1. That's a great one. I think all like the very first ones in particular, all the Avengers ones for sure. So like Iron Man 1, Thor 1, Captain America 1, and Avengers 1, definitely for sure you should watch. All the Avengers movies, so Avengers 1, 2, 3, and Endgame. I think all those. I think that Doctor Strange is up there.
I love that movie.
Yeah, I love Doctor Strange. He's a cool character, and it's a great movie. Benedict Cumberbatch is a great actor.
Yeah.
I think Guardians 1 is important. Thor 3 is also important. I know this is a lot of movies. This is a lot.
Yeah, but it's all like, it is a lot of movies, but it's like everybody has access to them, and
right.
you know, who knows who will actually watch them, but like, it gives me a good understanding, because like if I was going to redo the whole thing, and like I would want to do it in like a time saving way that would get me like the most bang for my buck, if that makes sense.
And like, I mean, I would, if you have the time, watch all of them. Like, they're great. But like, I realize people are busy and like life happens, and like you don't have time to commit to. I mean, there's 23 movies and 2 shows now. Like, that's a lot of time.
That is a ton.
I mean,
of time.
if you really want to get caught up without watching all the movies, like watch YouTube videos. Like, there are great YouTube videos that will sum up the MCU to get you caught up, and they will highlight the important things that have happened that so that you'll be aware. And also, like, if you're gonna go watch a movie, unless it's like Infinity War or Endgame, for the most part, the MCU does a pretty good job of having an enjoyable story without having the background.
Yeah, I would agree 100%.
So like, if your friends are like, let's watch Thor 3, like, you don't have to have seen all the movies up to that point. You don't have to have seen Thor 1 and 2 up to that point to enjoy it, because it, like, Thor 3 is just a good movie on its own, and it explains who Thor is, and I think each movie does that, where it's still enjoyable without having to have the context, which I think that's why the MCU has succeeded, is because it's more enjoyable if you have all those past movies and that knowledge in your head, but it's still enjoyable without it.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. What's your overall summary on like how they've been doing so far with the whole MCU, like all from phase 1, like Iron Man 1, to the very last film that they made, and what are your thoughts on it, man? 'Cause
I mean, there's definitely ups and downs, like, in the movies, and there's definitely like big conflicts on like who thinks what movies are better and all those things. And I think that at this point in time, the MCU is at its peak, and I hate to say this, and I hope the MCU keeps going strong for years and years, but I feel like they're getting to a point of, and I've talked to my wife and a few other people about this, like, they're getting to a point where it's like you said, there's a lot of movies, like, there's a lot to catch up on, and people, like young kids who haven't watched all the movies but want to get into it, and they jump into whenever, like, let's say they jump into like Avengers 5 or whatever, they're gonna be like, what is going on? Like, it's just getting a lot to like hold the weight of like story wise, and I love it, and I think it's enjoyable, but I know it's a lot. But right now I think Marvel's just kind of riding this high, because they had Endgame in 2019.
Whoa, was that long ago already?
Yeah.
Wow.
And they kind of, like, they basically planted the flag of, like, we made it. Like, we beat Thanos, and we brought literally everyone from every movie ever into the movie. And, like, we did it. We did what no one else has done before.
Right.
And they kind of just rode that high, and then COVID happened, and people, and I think honestly, just because not a lot of movies have come out, they've continued to ride that high.
Right.
So I think right now they're at an all-time high, and I hope they keep going. I think they have great opportunity to keep growing. But I definitely think the MCU started off slow. I think not a lot, like, even Daniel, like, if, like, he'll tell you, he didn't know that the movies were connected. So when the MCU was starting, like, there were all these movies, and like people didn't really understand, and then the Avengers came out, and they were like, wait a second, like, these are all like connected?
Yeah.
Like, what? And like that,
yeah.
There hadn't been, like, before, at that time, there hadn't been 5 movies of another movie franchise that all culminated into one at the time. And so I think once the Avengers, like the very first one, came out, people were like, I think I think we might need to pay attention to this.
Yeah.
Like this is cool. Like this is interesting. There's so much here, and there was only 6 movies at the time. And I think Marvel, they stumbled a little bit in phase 2 just because there was a few not great ones.
Mm-hmm.
So I think they stumbled a little bit in phase 2. But then once they kind of stepped into phase 3, I think they really got back into their stride. And they just made lots of great leaps and bounds towards Endgame, and then Endgame happened, and like I said, they've just they made it.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely been an uphill climb. And I mean, like I said, like when Iron Man was filmed, Marvel Studios was this tiny like,
Yeah.
just like, I guess we'll make an Iron Man movie. That's cool, I guess. And now it's this huge, like, if you go on Disney Plus, there's a Marvel tab, and like there's YouTube channels and like blogs and pages just all dedicated to this one universe. And so I think they've done a great job.
Yeah.
So
It's killer, man. It's so entertaining. I love all of it. It's hard not to, like, unless you just don't like superheroes or like you don't like, but it's suspenseful. It's action. There's like some stuff that pulls on the heartstrings, and it has a little bit of everything. It's cool. And you do feel connected with the characters.
Absolutely.
So it's like, it's weird because now that there's no more Iron Man, like, it's going to be weird. Like,
it's going to be weird.
It's going to be super strange for every other movie. And I've listened to podcasts with Robert Downey Jr., like, actually randomly a handful of them. Like, I've heard a few, and he's like, I don't think he's shutting the door completely, but like, it's basically, you know, like all the way.
Done.
Like he's done, you know? So it's like.
And I think that is going to be hard at first. But I also think, like, now that Iron Man and Captain America are gone, like, there is so much room for other characters to grow. And I mean, unfortunately, some characters that we wish were going to grow, like Black Panther, we're not going to get expanded upon because of his tragic death. But like Wanda, like, just in her show alone, like, they expanded so much on her, and now she's a fan favorite. Like, people who liked Wanda before, like, love her now and like are really pushing her, and people who didn't really notice her before are like, whoa, like, I did not realize that there was such an in-depth character in front of my face this whole time.
Right. That is cool.
And so there's just a lot of opportunity for growth for other characters.
If you had to choose top 3, what would you say your top 3 are in the Marvel universe so far? Like movies, and then characters. We'll
like characters that are still alive, or just the whole MCU.
We'll start off with the movies. Which movies you like the most, and then maybe explain a little bit why, and then we'll do the characters. Like, and it can be any characters, dead or alive or whoever. So
probably my favorite movie is Captain America: Civil War. So like I mentioned earlier, Civil War is a huge Marvel event in the comics, and that was one of the first comic books that I bought.
So that is an actual comic?
That is an actual comic.
Yeah.
And I remember reading it, and I had read about Civil War before I bought it, like the book or the comic book. So I knew a little bit. I knew like Iron Man and Captain America fought, just because the guide that I had read about it just kind of gave a brief overview of a bunch of stories. And I read it, and I was like, this is just so interesting. Like, even just knowing just at that time, like, so little about the comics, I knew it was a big deal that the heroes were fighting amongst themselves. And I loved that story. And so when they announced that they were going to do Civil War as a movie, I was very excited about that. And I love Captain America, and so I loved basically getting another Avengers movie without it being called Avengers. And I loved the dynamic of Cap and Iron Man, and then this new added aspect, which wasn't in the comics, of Baron Zemo manipulating everything, which Baron Zemo is a great character. I think Daniel Bruhl, I believe is his name, played him perfectly. and they introduced a lot of cool characters in that movie. Like that was the first introduction of Tom Holland's Spider-Man, Chadwick Boseman's Black Panther, and there was just so much heart and struggle in that movie, and I think that's why I love it. Number 2 is, I mean, it's hard not to say Endgame.
Yeah.
Like,
it's a great film.
It's so good, and it's the culmination of everything. Like we've talked for extensively on this podcast alone. It's so enjoyable. I mean, I cried, I cheered, I clapped in the theater, and I just still get so much joy watching it. My number 3, it's probably, and I'm probably not giving myself a lot of variety. It's probably a toss-up between Thor 3 and Captain America 1. Captain America 1 has a special place to me in particular because that movie is when I started to get it. Mm-hmm. Like that's when I had just started really reading about comics and starting to buy comics and getting into it. And I remember watching a trailer for Captain America 1 and I was like, wait a second, like I think this is connected to all the other movies. And I can remember like talking to my dad, showing him the trailer and be like, this is connected to Thor and this is connected to Iron Man. Like they're all connected. Like, and that is special to me because that's when I really started, like it clicked. Mm-hmm. And that's when comic books really started going for me. And I think Captain America 1's an enjoyable film.
Yeah.
Also, it's a ton of fun, great characters.
Yeah. That one's cool because obviously it's the first one that's going to introduce a character, but like it's cool to see how we have Captain America today, you know, and like even as a young guy, scrawny guy, like he's the same guy, just now.
Exactly.
Now he's built. It's
and
cool.
I think it's also an extra fun because it's like a timepiece, like it's a war film, but it's also a superhero film, which you don't get often. And so that was fun. And I think Thor 3, it's a toss-up between that one and Thor 3 because Thor 3, for anyone who's seen all the Thors and knows anything about the MCU, like Thor 3 turned Thor on his head. Yeah. Because Thor at the time, up until that point, was kind of just like this very stoic, like, oh, I'm Thor, I can do whatever, blah, blah, blah. And Thor 3 basically took him down 3 or 4 pegs and then brought him up 6 more while also making him a funny, enjoyable, but also like very serious character. And there's a lot of just new things that they did with Thor in that one. Yeah. And it's hilarious. And if you haven't seen it, go watch it.
Is that Ragnarok?
Thor Ragnarok, yeah.
That's hilarious.
So I think for the movies, that's my top 3. As for characters, I kind of mentioned earlier, Captain America is my favorite character. And I like Captain America not because he's this patriot and because he's American. Like,
you don't like patriots or something?
That's not what I'm saying. But like,
I'm just kidding.
Captain America to me represents what the world should be and what it should be striving towards. Because Captain America, like in the comics, he wants equality. He wants he's fighting for everyone. He's fighting for the poor, for the disenfranchised, for the people struggling. Like he realizes that America is not like this like happy-go-lucky place. Like America's hard. And most people would say like Captain America is the most Captain America when he is fighting for the little guy and pushing back against the government or whoever is trying to oppress them. I mean, like, and like we're gonna like in the comics, he like when he got old, like he rapidly aged in the comics, he gave his shield to Falcon, and I think that was a big step for Captain America, and I think that showed that he's fighting for everyone, and he knows what the world needs, and he knew it. Like at that time, like Falcon is going to be what the world needs right now, and I trust him, and I think he's just noble and just he loves everyone. And I mean, I think while he's not explicitly Christian in the comics, like for me personally, like I think Captain America shows the ideals of loving everyone and accepting everyone and pushing them forward ahead of himself, and like I said, just fighting for what is right and not what is good. And like I think they sum it up in Captain America 1 perfectly, is like Steve Rogers was chosen not because he's a perfect soldier or because he's the strong guy, but because he's a good man. And I think that's why I like it, because that's something you can look to. And
It's relatable.
He's relatable, and I just think he's interesting. He has a ton of backstory. I hope I didn't get too political talking about him.
That's okay. We just know who you vote for. No, I'm just kidding. So why did they take him out? Like, I have that was confusing to me, because I was like,
so I mean, on paper, it's his contract was up.
Like the actor Chris Evans?
Yeah, like his contract was up. Story wise, I think that it was just time, and I think they wanted to move in a new direction with Sam, which I fully support. If you're watching Falcon and Winter Soldier, I think that's where we're headed personally. I think it's heading towards Sam being the new Captain America, and I'm all for that. I'm super stoked. I've been reading Sam as Captain America recently. I actually have one that I ordered the other day that just arrived today at my house.
Nice.
And don't even get me started on Sam. I think Sam's an awesome character. I'm super excited to see where they go with him. So I just really think they're kind of moving from, not away necessarily, but just, I mean, they are moving away from those like core 6 characters, like from the first Avengers.
Yeah.
And like I said earlier, they want to build these new characters. They want to build on Wakanda. They want to build on Tom Holland as Spider-Man. They want to build on, Doctor Strange, like all these new people, this new blood. They want to build on that, and like, because like it's interesting, and and on the screen, there's only so much you can do with the character before you're just like, all right, like we've seen them all. There's not much to do left.
I agree with that, because to a certain point, we all know that Captain America is one. He's never going to give up, right?
Right.
Like, he's never going to back down from anybody. Even if he's losing, he's never going to give up or quit.
Mm-hmm.
That's a guarantee.
Exactly.
And then we know that. We basically know his patterns already.
Mm-hmm.
We know, like, he's going to lead the charge. Even if he says he's not in the beginning, he's going to rise up and do it, you know?
Right. Like, there's no point in
expanding on what we already know.
Expanding on an arc that's completed.
Yeah, true. That's a good way to put it. What are you... I was going to say, what do you think, or who do you think is, but you obviously probably know, who's like the strongest out of all the Avengers we've seen so far? And then, like, if there's like another one that people don't know of, who is there like a strongest of like heroes?
Yeah, so I think if we're really going to say who's the strongest, I'm going to say Scarlet Witch, just right off the bat.
Oh, right.
I think she could tear anyone apart if she wanted to.
Like, literally, right? Like, just like, without even touching them?
Yeah, just totally I mean, she could like snap and put him out of existence if she wanted to, in my opinion. A character that I think is extremely powerful and it's very interesting, and I wish I would have mentioned him earlier when you mentioned, like, who do you think should be brought in, is a character named Sentry. In the comics, he's basically Superman he's basically like Superman on steroids to me.
Wow.
He the way they describe him in the comics, he has the power of 1,000 exploding suns, and
dang,
he's an interesting character, and I think he should be brought in. And he also has an interesting dynamic within himself, because he almost has a split personality, because there's a version of him called the Void that comes out, and it's basically like a super dark celestial being that just hates everything pretty much, and so he's constantly battling that, like, internally and sometimes externally. So I think that's interesting.
Wow.
Yeah,
it'd be cool to see that come to life. That'd be that would be cool, because you could do a ton of movies on that, explaining.
For sure.
That's so cool. it's crazy how they just have literally endless possibilities of what they can
Endless.
do. So we probably should expect them to never stop making movies, but there probably will be a gap, right? We can assume there'll
I
be a
don't
gap.
think Marvel will stop making movies.
Mm-hmm.
I think we should expect some point in the future a reboot or just leaving the MCU and going somewhere and making a new Marvel universe.
Mm-hmm.
Just because, like I said, movies are kind of hard to keep. Like it's, I feel like it's impossible to say like there's going to be an MCU for 50 years,
Mm-hmm.
because at that point, like, well, I mean, we'll take Tom Holland example. He'll be 60. Like it's hard to have Spider-Man like.
He's only 10.
Oh, here's the 10th Spider-Man, like 50 years later, and I think they should, because like I think they at some point should just say this is the end.
Mm-hmm.
I think anything that just go like any TV show like Friends,
Seinfeld.
like any show that goes too long, like everyone will say, well, at this point it just kind of got old and like just repetitive and stuff like that, and like at that point you're like, I just wish they would have ended it on a good note, and I would have enjoyed that.
Yeah.
So I hope they do that, and I hope they don't run the MCU into the ground. So that's my hope.
Yeah. Well, I personally don't see that happening anytime soon.
No.
But I see what you mean, and it's definitely a possibility that they could do that. Because you got to think, at the end of the day, like, Marvel, like, the people who are creating these movies they want money, you know? And they make a ton of money in, like, here and in different countries. And so it's like, why would they stop if they're bringing in, like, millions?
I'm hoping they have, like, another, like, Thanos-level threat of, like, this character that they build up for years and years, and then they fight and they defeat.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope after that one they're like, all right, that's the end of this super long saga, and then who knows, maybe they take 2, 3, 4 years off, and then all right, we're doing something new, and they start something else and try something new. So
that'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it just really, no one knows. So
I think the coolest part about it is that nobody was expecting it until like middle of phase 2 or like beginning of phase. So like you had a lot of stuff that you're like, oh, this is connected, kind of like you were talking about earlier, not even knowing it was going to lead up to this big thing, unless you kind of had an idea with comics. But like for the average viewer that like me, I don't read. I've watched all the movies. I've seen them all multiple times, but I had no idea it was leading up to this bigger thing until I got to the end. And so like I remember watching Iron Man 1 like at my house with my siblings, and we were like, what? Like, what's next? Like, what are they going to do next? And then you kind of forget about it. And then Iron Man 2 comes out, and you're like, what? And then it's kind of like that same process. And then you never realize, because you don't read the comics, it's like you never realize it's going to be like Thanos is coming, right? Like, and which it makes it 10 times better to me, because if you already kind of know what's going to happen at the end, or like what the end is going to be, it takes away a huge part of the story. Like,
I think you're right.
That's like reading a book and already knowing the ending, and like, you know, it's just, there's no point of like really putting that much time and investment into it if you already know how it's going to end. So I think that's cool. And if they were to do that, that would be freaking cool, because I mean, I don't know any other villains. You might, and you could, it's cool because you could speculate, and you're like, for you being knowledgeable on the subject, you could be like, oh, well, I think this is what they're doing, and like in a few years we'll see this happen.
Yeah.
But for the average viewer, it's going to be like a whole new experience and a whole new thing, which is cool. And it's cool, like what you said, like you said, Tom Holland eventually is going to age, and he's not going to be able to actually play Spider-Man anymore, which is so true. Like I don't know why I didn't think of that, but it's like obviously he's going to get older, and
he's lucky with a young face. So, and I think Tom Holland will stick around for a while.
Yeah.
But like, at a point, like
he's going to get like, it's going to be noticeable that he's older, like just like with Robert Downey Jr. and like because in the first one he looks pretty dang good.
He looks pretty good,
and now he's like, oh man, he's kind of got that crow's feet and like
crow's feet
by his eye.
Crow's feet.
Yeah, but That's amazing, man. Have you ever thought about starting a YouTube channel? Like
I
talking
thought-
about this?
Yes, I've thought about making a TikTok account, making a YouTube channel, and I think what holds me back is there's just so many more, like you and Danny think of me as like very knowledgeable, and I'll admit I'm knowledgeable, but there are so many more people who are even more knowledgeable than I am. They're so smart, and they're older than me, so they've grown up for decades and decades with these people. And I mean, like if I had to give any recommendations, like new rock stars on YouTube, Comics Explained, and then TikTok, which is kind of blowing up right now. Straw Hat Goofy, I believe is his name. He's a really good one.
Here's the thing. I think you said, I thought about making a YouTube. I thought about making a TikTok. My advice to you is stop thinking and just do it. Like, because here's the thing. It doesn't matter, right?
Right.
You know how many people have podcasts, and I've started podcasts. Like,
That's true.
it's like it truly doesn't matter. If you love it and you love explaining it, I think you should do it, because you've just explained this to me in a way that's like you've been saying, it's palatable. It's easy for me to understand and digest, and the viewers are going to have a terrific time hearing this, because they can understand what you're saying. And so, and the beautiful thing is, like, they may be older, but like you're younger. You have the advantage of being young. You have technology on your side, and knowledge of this technology and trends and social media. And it's like, it's never too late, bro. It's like, you know way more than the average person. There are people that know more than you, but like take Joe Rogan, for example. Like, people know way more than him, but he does his thing, and like people like that, you know. It's all subjective at the end of the day. It's like, there's no wrong way to do something, because if it's right to you and you like to do it, then it's like,
that's true,
you know. So because it would be so cool if you just, like, a TikTok would be nice. I got like something in my throat. I don't know what it is, but
no.
This happened last time too. I don't know who it was with, but anyways, I get emotional. No, but seriously, you could just set up a phone and be like, listen guys, I'm gonna break down, you know, in game in however long a TikTok is. I've known nothing about TikToks, but
I think the longest is 60 seconds.
So like a minute, I'm going to break down Avengers in a minute, you know, and then you could do it, make it like cool, put the little pop-up things, you know, like with the text. Yeah. And that'd be cool. It'd be the end of it. Like, and then just like with this thing that I'm doing, the more you do it, the better you'll get. Yeah. And so it's just, and it's fun. Like,
it is fun.
We have this idea in our heads nowadays that, and I do too, and I have to fight it, because I'm like, man, I want like everybody to watch these podcasts. But first of all, I know I'm not good enough yet to where people would want to watch it, because the majority of my viewers are people who know me, right? And people who know the guests. So it makes sense. You know, I'm not going to get a random viewer from a person down the street who doesn't know me or my guest. Like, maybe if they happen to hear the topic and they find the topic something interesting, they'll give it a listen. But other than that, it's just going to be people I know, you know? Yeah. But it's like I love it. I'm getting better at it, and I have a passion for it. And so I'm just going to jump in it, you know?
Yeah, I probably should. I mean, there's just, I know we've talked at length about, like, oh, do you want to write comics? Do you want to draw comics? And so, I mean, I think even just doing a TikTok would be a step in the right direction. So, yeah, I might need to start doing that.
Mm-hmm. I would recommend it, because I would watch, and I know Daniel would watch, and you know, there's a bunch of people out there that would watch, you know? Yeah. And you'll find your own voice, because people like to listen to you talk. Like, I like to listen to you talk on something you're knowledgeable about, you know? Yeah. If you're talking about, like, sports cars, maybe that's a different subject, right? I wouldn't probably listen to that.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that.
Yeah, but I think you should start a YouTube channel for sure. Break down movies. And, this is what I was going to say, though. I totally lost track of it.
No, you're good.
But we get this idea of, like, oh, man, I'm going to start this, and then it's going to blow up. Like, you think about the numbers, you think about the success, and, like, because you listen and you see these people that you're interested in on YouTube and stuff, and they have the numbers already. But what you don't realize is that, like, it took them 10 years to get that successful. Right. There's a common saying. It's like a lot of people who are, you know, quote unquote successful or famous or whatever, they say, it took me 10 years to become an overnight success. And I truly try to, like, think about that. I'm like, wow, like, how crazy is that like they've been putting in the work. They've been doing episodes every Friday, every single day, whatever it is, every day for 10 years. And then after their like 100 or 1000th episode, let's say, somebody notices it and they're like, whoa, this is actually good. And then people start to listen, and then they start to, like, I don't know if you know who Jordan Peterson is. Mm-hmm. I don't know his background, but he's just super knowledgeable guy. And he's just some sort of, I don't even know, doctor. Honestly, I don't know. I sound like an idiot right now, but he's like blown up over the recent years, and he basically gives advice and tells you, like, listen, like, if you want to do something for yourself, like to develop healthy habits and to like just to be the best version of yourself, like you got to do the things that are necessary. And then he says that too, because like overnight, like he was on the Joe Rogan podcast and then a couple other podcasts, and then like the next day he was like boom, like all over the news, you know, like and so it's just the consistency of doing it and the passion behind it will just lead to good things. And like it doesn't even have to be like, that doesn't mean sponsors or ads or money, you know, because that's just, that would be cool. But like at the end of the day, if you're having a fun time doing it, like instead of going home and just kind of just chilling, you could be putting your time in that and then seeing the benefits of it, because some people could enjoy it, you know. I think you should do it. I think I'm super biased, but it's because I'm kind of caught. I kind of caught the bug. I've caught the bug. I'm trying to do episodes every week now. I'm always thinking about it. I stay up, you know, pretty late sometimes working on these episodes. Especially now that I have like a job, like a part-time job. It's like my schedule's a little less flexible and more time consumed at work and doing other stuff. So, but it's like all I think about, you know, like, and I know you're similar with comics. I know you think about this stuff and you're like, you think of new characters. And so it would just be cool to put that in the world. Because if you don't, then it's just going to be lost in the universe. Dude, one thing. So we've been talking for a while, so I don't want to keep it too much longer. But I wanted to bring up the fact that you used to weigh what? Like, how much did you used to weigh?
Yeah. So I used to weigh... So I'm pretty small right now, but I used to weigh around 200 pounds.
And what do you... So, for reference, how tall are you?
I'm 5'5". I'm very short.
5'5", and what do you weigh right now?
125.
Okay, so you used to weigh 200 pounds. When I first met you, you didn't look anything like this.
No.
You were a little more round.
Yes, I was a bit more of a circle back then and not less of a line.
A bit more of a circle.
Yeah, so I spent a lot of my life being a bigger guy. I spent a lot of years, probably from 6th grade all the way to my sophomore year of college, being a pretty hefty guy, which I guess that doesn't sound like a long time, but like when you're a kid, like if you're a little chubby, like whatever, you're just like kid chubby. But like once I got into being a teenager and then starting being a young adult, like I really noticed like I'm a bigger guy. And
well, 6th grade to sophomore in college is literally like half of your life.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, for me, like at that point in time, it was half my life.
And it's only a little bit less than half of your life now. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're only 20 something, and 6th grade's like the halfway mark, you know?
Yeah.
Right? And so you spent literally like the time you've probably been able to understand what like weight is all the way up until that point, like being a heavy guy.
Being a heavy guy, yeah.
Yeah.
And almost all my friends were not heavy guys. A lot of my best friends, even my best friends now, like are very skinny, very healthy, like not bigger guys at all. And so I was always very conscious of my weight. And I spent a lot of that time really just kind of like pushing it to the side and not really trying not to worry about it. But once you get older, you start worrying about image. And like for me, like I started worrying about girls. I started worrying about like what do other people think about me? Like, do people just see me as like a fat guy? And it all just kind of came to a head like my sophomore year of college. I was living with Danny at the time. We lived in a house with a few other guys. There was 8 of us actually total. And I had come back from winter break, and and I just remember we were sitting up there one day, and in our room, and I was like, I'm tired of being fat. I'm sick of being fat. Like, I feel gross. I don't like the way I look. Because, I mean, like, me and Danny, like, the semester before would sit in our room and we'd eat a whole pizza and a tray of pasta from Domino's in a day each. And as fun as that sounds now, and like as delicious as it was, like it's not good for you. And I just remember being back like after winter break, and my parents had really talked about like telling me like once Christmas is over, like me and your dad, we're gonna get healthy and we're gonna start eating better. And they did. They ate better. I mean, they didn't go super hard like I did at the time, just because they were adults. They had jobs, and
adults are. It's weird for adults because it's like they don't know. I don't want to say they don't know, and I don't want to say every adult, obviously, because there's some super fit adults. But a lot of adults have it in their head that it's just the way things are. Well, it's just I've always done this, so like why change it? Why change the routine now? And so
I came back and I was telling Danny this, and he said, "Let's do it. Let's actually do it. Like, let's actually put in the work." And I said, "Okay." And so I bought meat, I bought vegetables, and then we started doing Insanity. If anyone has ever done Insanity, it's actually insane, and it's really hard.
Yeah.
And very quickly I was like, this is hard. I don't think I can do this. And luckily I had Danny there to push me. But the thing that I always think back to the most of like what really made me start losing weight and like get serious was I had a guy come into our room, and we had probably just finished an Insanity workout. And I don't think he knew that I was doing Insanity at the time, and he was also a bigger guy. And he said, "Yeah, I just got back from doing Insanity." And he looked at me and he said, "I don't think you can do it." And that royally pissed me off.
He said that to you?
He said it straight to my face, like purposefully went out of his way to tell me that I couldn't do something. And I just remember being like, I can't believe this guy just said that to me. And I don't think I said anything the rest of the time he was in our room. And he left, and Danny was like, "Are you good, man?" Like, I'm normally a quiet guy, but he had known me long enough to know like something was wrong. And I said, "He just said I couldn't do that. I've been doing that. Like, I know I can do this." And that just made me so angry that someone told me that I couldn't do something. And so I spent the rest of that semester doing Insanity and putting in the work and putting in the effort. And I never said anything to this guy. I never went up to him and said, like, "I can do it." Like, I know I can do it. Like, you're wrong. I never went up to him. But in my head, I wanted to prove to myself that I could.
Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of that semester, I think I'd lost 30 to 40 pounds, which is a lot within 5 months. And that just kind of put me on this track to be where I am now. And there's definitely been some highs and some lows in it. I mean, there was a point a couple of years ago where I wasn't fat anymore, but I was unhealthy because I wasn't eating enough, and because I was just eating the bare minimum to make it through the day. And like, I had friends like asking my fiance, who's now my wife at the time, my wife who was my fiance at the time, if I was okay, because they thought I was sick. And so
because of all the weight loss.
And like, there's pictures like that my wife shows me, and she's like, "This is why I was worried." And I look just like kind of like dead and like tired, and my eyes are like just black,
like sunken in.
It's sunken in, like there's shadows. And I never realized at the time, because I was just like, "Oh, I'm not eating too many calories, so I must be okay. Like, I must be all right." And now for the past year, I've been working out more consistently, doing kettlebell stuff, and making sure I'm eating the right amount and gaining healthy weight. And right now I'm probably at my peak physical condition that I think I've been in a long time, and maybe ever. And so yeah, I've been through a lot physically wise, like weight wise, and so yeah, I mean, it's just been a crazy journey.
It has been, dude. I remember seeing you that first time, and like, you know, I'm not judgmental. I'm like, oh, cool, like whatever. Like your weight didn't appear, like obviously you see somebody and you know they're bigger, but in my head I wasn't like, oh, this guy's a fat guy, you know, like I was just like, oh, okay, that's Chase. There's Chase. And then I think the next time I saw you, I think it was the next time, because it would have been like at least a year, maybe two.
I think you're right.
The next time you were skinny, I was like, who is this guy? It's like total. You look like a different person. Like
that summer after I had initially lost like the first 40, 50 pounds, I went home and people I had known for years would introduce themselves to me, and I'm like, it's Chase. And they were like, Chase? Like, you're Chase? And I was like, yeah. And they were like, you look like a different human. And that was like so weird to me, because I was like, I don't think I look that different. Yeah. But like looking back at old pictures now, I'm like, wow, I really do look like, I honestly like think of myself in I think of old me as a different person. Like I call him Fat Chase, but like I think of that as a different person, because I can't even imagine being back there anymore, because not only did I change physically, but I also changed mentally, and like my confidence levels accelerated, so I became more outgoing, and it's weird to think back to being a fat guy or a bigger guy. And
why don't you like to say fat guy?
I mean, because I know there's people who have it worse than me, and are like, I wish I could be 200 pounds. And so,
well, I mean, it's perspective, right? Like,
it is perspective.
200 pounds to you is maybe 300 pounds to somebody else. That's like a higher.
That's true.
But you know, I understand what you're saying. But
I mean, like, so yeah, like I mean, Fat Chase was. I mean, you can ask Daniel. Like, I think a weight played a large part into my personality. Yeah. And when I was a freshman in college, like I sat in me and Daniel's room probably 90% of the time and just watched TV or played games, and I didn't really have any friends outside of Daniel. And then once I started losing weight and I started putting myself out there, I made a ton of friends. I have so many great friends now. I still have friends from back when I was fat, like, but yeah, I mean, just the weight loss just changed so much about me. Not, like I said, not just physically, but just every part of me changed, which in and of itself is just insane to me. So
that's crazy. Yeah. And you did this all doing keto, right? Like that was your main. That was your main.
So when I first started, I started on keto, which I know now is not a good diet. Before all you crazy people are like, keto's a bad blah blah blah. Well, you shouldn't be doing it.
I think honestly, it just depends. Right. On like your health, right? Yeah. It depends on what condition you're in, and it depends on how strict you are.
And I don't think, because me and Daniel did keto, I don't think we did it right. We didn't really like be like, we need to eat this like a ton of butter and cream. Like we just were like, let's just eat meat and vegetables, which in and of itself isn't bad. Yeah. I think nowadays I know like you need carbs to make it, but like at the time when I first started losing weight, I don't think I ate carbs until I think I went, I don't even know how long without having carbs. And then once I like reached a certain weight, I was like, all right, I'll have a cheat day. And then as time has gone on, I just kind of, honestly, I eat whatever I want as long as I'm not eating in like too much of a surplus, because that's when it's unhealthy.
Yeah, that's crazy, man. Yeah, I think I would agree that, I mean, I don't know all the science behind it or anything, but I think keto is just very unsustainable. It's hard to sustain not eating carbs in a carb world. Exactly. But I think your body needs that fat. That's like Like fat is good
Oh
for
yeah,
you.
no, fat is not bad. I think there's just a horrible misconception on fat.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think because like avocado and I can't. It's not really the only good fat that I know. I know there's more, but like avocado is like a great fat. And like you need that for to live.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's amazing, man. I can't. It was such a crazy change.
Right.
Because I didn't even know you that well, but then whenever I saw you again, I was like, "Who is this guy? What do you do with the other Chaser that I knew?" Which is inspiring to a lot of people, man. And so I know this is your mental health probably has gone up too. I would just assume. I don't know if you had any like issues in the past, but I just like personally for me, I've always kind of been in this like in high school I was kind of chubby. Mm-hmm. Never super fit. I played basketball, but I was like I didn't lift any weights hardly.
Yeah.
So I was like skinny chubby, but like I had like very little muscle mass. Mm-hmm. Then I started to pick it up after high school. I got and I fell in love with the whole fitness like world. It's so fun, and it's crazy the difference it does have on your mind, not only your body. But for me, my issue is overeating. Like I am a glutton to the fullest extent when it comes to food. Like I have like a reputation literally everywhere I go that's like around people that I know, and like my family, Taylor's family, friends. They're like, okay, if I don't finish my food, Aaron for sure will. That's like my reputation, which is kind of like for me, whenever I'm in that mindset of like gluttony, I'm like that. I love that. Like, give me all your food. But from a health standpoint, I'm like, oh, that's like my plate probably was way too many calories for me. And like, I don't count calories. Like I kind of do, kind of don't. I just try to keep track and make sure I don't have too much. I'm not super strict on like measuring everything, but it's like, it's crazy to see like the difference it has mentally. Cause there are periods of time where I gain weight, and then I'll go up, and then I'll look in the mirror. I'll be like, dude, I gotta get it back on it. And then I'll, change my routine, change the way I'm eating. And then that weight will go down, and I'll just feel 10 times better. Not only like physically, but mentally. I feel more clear, more sharp, more energy throughout the day. Like I don't crash, and like, it's just so amazing. Like, so whenever you were a fat guy, did you notice like the clear difference between like that you were not healthy? Like, could you tell? But like before Daniel mentioned it to you, before you were ever involved in that, like, could you tell like you weren't like, or did you just feel normal? Does that make sense? Like what I'm asking?
Yeah. So I was aware that I was not healthy. I knew full well that I was unhealthy, but I never really realized how bad, like when I would eat, I never really thought about like, what am I putting in my body? Like, what am I like? Because I drink diet soda now, but back then I drank just normal soda, just way more than probably your average person.
Right.
And like,
So
I would drink juice and not water, and like, I would eat like a double patty Whataburger and like a large fry and a large Coke.
Yeah.
And if you count all that, it's probably like 1,800 calories alone, just that double Whataburger meal with all those things. And I didn't think about it, but I knew I was unhealthy, and for years I said, oh, I want to change. But it wasn't until like that Daniel really started pushing me to like, let's focus on what you're putting in your body. Let's actually think about it. Like what is good for your body? What is going to help you have the energy you need, and what is going to help build you up, not like make you fat, but like what will build you up like as a person, and like what will get your body like to be strong. So I never really thought about it, and luckily now, like what I'm putting in my body is such a big part of my life. It's a big part of my family's life, honestly, now. Like, because once I lost weight, my whole family lost weight.
That's
my
amazing.
brother lost a ton of weight.
Was he chubby too?
Yeah.
Wow.
My sister lost a ton of weight. My dad lost a ton of weight. My mom has lost a ton of weight. Like, my whole family, like, what we put in our bodies is important now. and even as I've gotten older, it's become more important, especially now. My wife is diabetic, so we really have to think about what we're putting in our bodies. So yeah, at the time, like, I knew I was unhealthy, but I never thought about what I was eating and what it was actually doing to me.
Yeah. A lot of the time you don't know.
Yeah.
Unless somebody kind of tells you, or because like if you're not like feeling 100% like optimal in your brain and your mental space, it's going to feel normal to you if that's your everyday life.
Exactly.
You know? And so it's crazy because I've physically felt the difference, you know, like with the confidence and just your mental capacity.
Yeah.
And I want like everybody to have it. And like this is what I tell everybody, like because I try to rub a little bit of this aspect, like the health and fitness aspect, on almost everybody I meet or encounter.
Right.
I feel like that's I've always just felt called. Like sometimes I don't do it right, like with probably like my family, I'll probably make them mad and they won't listen. But you know, like at least I attempt to do it in a way to where it's like I want them to experience the change that they would go through, the mental clarity,
absolutely,
even like, you know, like I used to get like acne on my back, not bad, but like, and when I started eating better, it would go away. Like I legit, like, knock on wood, like it's a blessing. I haven't been sick in a long time. Like, and I haven't felt ill.
Oh yeah.
I haven't felt any sort of like sickness. Ibuprofen used to be something I took quite often, like not often, but like, you know, take it a decent amount. And I haven't taken ibuprofen in like
really
months, like if not months, years. Like I legit don't take any pain meds. I don't, like, I'm just healthy and I'm optimal, and I'm like, it's I couldn't imagine a world without that. And so it's cool to see that you like led the way for your family, because it's super hard. It's hard to come to terms with that if you're not.
It's hard to come to terms with. It's hard to commit in a world that I would say probably your average person like doesn't know anything about like food, and like I don't think, like, if you were to ask someone how much, or like what do you think, like, let's just do calories because people know calories, like how many calories do you think's in a Whataburger? Like, people don't know that information, and people don't know, like, they just don't know like the basics. And like I mentioned, I think you do need to know like what you're eating, and I think it's important to know what's good, what's not, like, and what's good and what's not is very variable depending on you as a person. But like, I hope everyone at some point like gets to a point where they understand food, but I also don't want them to get where they're obsessed about it. Because you said you don't count calories. I still count calories, but I spent a long time being way too obsessed with calories. And that, when I was really obsessed with them, like, my anxiety was at an all-time high. Because if I ate 100 calories over what I qualified as my limit, I would just lose it. And so, yeah, I mean, I hope everyone can, at some point, like, get to a point where they understand, like, nutrition. Yeah, we'll put it in terms of, like, I hope they understand nutrition, but I hope people never get to the point of, like, obsessive, because that's just unhealthy.
Yeah, you can go overboard for sure.
It's so interesting that there's just like this line, like that fine line.
Yeah, very, very fine, man.
There's the healthy line, and then there's unhealthy fat, and there's unhealthy, like, too skinny.
Yeah, I agree, man. Chase, thank you for coming on the show, man. We're going to wrap it up right here. But
thanks for having me.
Dude, I'm so glad you were able to come on and do this. And it's a fun weekend for you. I hope you got a little bit of publicity. You had a photo shoot with Daniel. And
yeah,
that was cool. That was really cool. But, man, I really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, man, I'm happy to be here. This was so much fun. And dude, like, before we end, I just want to say, like, props to you for, like, sticking with this. This is so cool what you're doing, man.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate it. I love you, dude. Talk to you later.
Love you, man.
See
Later.
You, man. Thank you.